what is your, or do you have a level of concern, or maybe concern is not the right word, but a level of
skepticism?
Yeah, hey, this might actually happen for Matt Rhule.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a level of skepticism about it. I think there's a lot of things that on the surface line up. I mean, it's very early in the search there, and it's fascinating to go back and look and see who the early favorite candidates were when Nebraska was hiring Scott Frost's replacement. Matt Rhule was not on that list. He was still employed.
I say he hadn't been fired yet, right?
He hadn't been fired yet, but I mean, that was the search was definitely pointing elsewhere. But I don't know. I mean, I think it's going to be a situation where until Penn State hires somebody that's not Matt Rhule, or you get something announced from Nebraska, I mean, I'm going to at least leave the door open that it's a possibility. So, yeah, I mean, I think that's just kind of where we're at. And it's, unfortunately for Nebraska, it's going to be one of those things where if this season keeps rolling the way it is and has the potential to be, it's not like that's going to quiet anything down. You know what I mean? Like it's only going to kind of ramp up nationally. So that's just kind of the nature of things. It's just a bit. I appreciated Matt Rhule on Monday basically saying like, yeah, you guys don't you don't do this much around here. Like this is kind of how this works whenever you're a coveted head coach and you're winning football games. So I appreciated that.
Bruntz, when you're looking at the Penn State job, actually, do you remember who off the top of your head was on the early list for Frost? The only guy I can think of was Matt Campbell.
Well, he's always there.
I was saying on every list ever.
You just start there. Trying to think who else was on there. It was
Fickle on the early list?
Fickle was on there.
Was it like Kleiman, Leipold?
Yeah, I mean it was kind of the standards. They're playing the hits basically at the time.
I remember Urban was like a fan thing.
Everybody wanted Urban for whatever.
Everybody wants Urban.
Yeah.
He's also kind of the. I mean, were there any groomers at that point? I don't think there were any John Gruden rumors. But that's also
surprisingly no. I don't think there were
a hot board favorite. But no, I mean that was the list, and we'll see where things go. I mean this is how searches work, and I'm for better or for worse, now that coaches are being fired at the midpoint of the season, it just kind of ramps everything up, and you just got to kind of follow the crumbs where they go. I mean you even have this morning some Penn State's chatter about Kalen DeBoer, so we'll see, but that's I don't think where things necessarily stand on October 16th is where they're going to kind of finish out.
It's kind of funny because I thought about Kalen DeBoer because after the Florida State loss and after last year, it's like, oh, he might not make it through the year. Then Alabama starts to play well and they start to win some big games or whatever. But then you're like, if they lose to Tennessee, maybe that's back on the table again. And I think we always think of DeBoer as kind of more of a northern guy. But as you kind of look at the Penn State job, and I don't expect you to be like a full-fledged expert on this, but just like from the outside looking in, when you fire a coach that's been as successful as James Franklin, like in your mind, because there's a name out this morning like Fran Brown. I'm like, do you fire James? Like I get Fran Brown's much younger and like energetic and maybe on the upswing, but like, do you fire a James Franklin? Just be like, hey, let's go hire Fran Brown.
No, I mean he's not top of the list. It's interesting. I think he's going to be a really good head coach somewhere.
Yeah.
I mean the trouble for Penn State is there's not a lot of resumes out there that are going to stack up to James Franklin's. Like there's just not. Like
narrowed yourself to like 2 or 3 guys, right? Like that as like actual clear upgrades.
Like if you just do the Pepsi challenge with the resumes, like you're not going to have many people that you can throw in there and, blind resume feel like you significantly upgraded. And I think that's probably got to be at least a caveat in the back of the minds of people who are considering that job is like, look who you're following, how turnkey is this really, and how quickly can you win conference championships? And I mean, even getting to the college football playoff isn't even like a box that you tick there. Like that's been done. So
yeah, you have to win a national championship, right?
Like he won 2 games in the playoff last year.
Right. So that's the trouble. And that's what I think you kind of have to consider. And I think coaches think about things differently than anybody else does. Like when you're actually the person that's in that chair, you're looking at everything. You're looking at, I mean, the support piece of it is something that coaches look at. Like what's the difference there between the floor and the ceiling and being able to win significant games there? I mean, I think there's going to be coaches that'll look at that and say, yeah, I can be the guy that can get you over the top. But I mean, I do think, that the fact that you just fired somebody with that kind of a record should give people a little bit of pause in spite of all of the positives that are there. I mean, and it's not a great example, but I mean, I'm sure there were coaches back when Frank Solich was fired at that time that looked at the situation and thought, I don't want any of that. Like, I can't, how much time do you have to realistically kind of bring things in? So that's kind of, I think, has to be part of the consideration is, can you go in there and win quickly when you just, blew somebody out of there who's going to be probably pretty popular themselves on the coaching carousel as it starts spinning? Because there's going to be a lot of prime jobs open this cycle. I mean, there already are, and there's going to be more as the dominoes kind of fall. So, I mean, that's absolutely front of mind, I think, for a lot of coaches is, how much leeway do you actually have before they kind of turn on you?
Bruntz, let's turn our attention to Minnesota here. How much do you kind of weigh some of the factors going into this game, whether it's Nebraska's recent record against Minnesota, whether it's the short week coming off an East Coast trip, whether it's the quote unquote distractions, whatever there are with the Matt Rhule stuff going on? Like, how much of the non-football things are you thinking about when looking at this game?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I didn't get the sense that there's a ton of distraction from hearing from players this week. I mean, maybe I'm misreading that, but they felt pretty dialed in. I felt the coaching staff was pretty dialed in from, who we heard from. I think this is going to be a good test of truly how far Nebraska's come in terms of, I mean, guys, I'm taking your question a different way, but it's going to be a good test of the on-field stuff and the kind of, the turnover margin stuff that Nebraska's improved a lot on. Like, is Nebraska truly improved on special teams? Those types of little things that add up to losing a game against Minnesota that Nebraska has done a lot in the past. I feel like that's what this game is going to test. Also, it's a true road game that's actually going to be a road game, which Maryland probably didn't feel like that at times. I think there's a lot kind of around this game that is going to be a pretty good test for this team. I mean, I think we have a decent sense, I think, of Nebraska's kind of mental makeup in 2025 and the fact that they're able to overcome things, stay in the fight for 60 minutes. That's all good. I think it's going to be tested again because if you look at even last week, what Minnesota did against Purdue, I mean, Purdue Minnesota was on the ropes. Purdue turns the ball over 4 times. And that's the ball game. So can Nebraska kind of continue to do the small things that they've done so far this year and come out with a win? I'm assuming, though, that, some of the off the field stuff that you asked about, the travel and short week and everything else, probably plays a little bit into your ability to do the small things.
Not small things. The Nebraska defensive line that was criticized for a while after that first game and going on into the season, they've improved as the season has gone on. And although they gave up a decent amount of rushing yards to a Maryland team that didn't seem all that interested in running the ball before that game, this Minnesota team has shown that they can't really run the ball as well. And now that Nebraska has a not-so-mobile quarterback to face, the defensive line for Nebraska should be able to get into his face. What are you expecting or hoping to see from those talented big guys up front? Because they've been kind of controlling the line of scrimmage for a few games now.
Yeah, no, the way you worded it, I think, is Maryland wasn't really interested, but then Nebraska showed up and they were somewhat interested. Like Minnesota's always interested in running the ball. I think they're going to be interested in doing it on Friday. It's a matter of whether they can. I mean, I thought Purdue really dominated the line of scrimmage against Minnesota on both sides of the ball, which I was a little bit surprised to see from a Minnesota team. I think Minnesota is going to try to run the ball in Nebraska. I mean, you'd be crazy not to. I think every team on Nebraska's schedule the rest of the way would be crazy to not try it. So, the front seven is going to need to show up. They're going to need to tackle well. Some of the runs that Minnesota favors just in their scheme are the types of runs that have gotten to Nebraska this season. So they're going to need to play well. And I think you want to try to turn it into a throw game and make them a little bit more one-dimensional if possible. It's kind of wild, though. I mean, it's almost like bizarro Minnesota, where the one thing you could count on for years was that they were going to turn around and hand the ball off and be efficient there and mix in some RPO, and that's how you win 24-20. So I think Nebraska's defense has the potential to definitely hang in there with Minnesota's offense. I think they're going to try it, but I think Nebraska's defense needs to kind of start fast, get a lot of guys to the ball, and show that they're going to tackle well. And I think that's going to be a recipe in that first half for getting off to a good start.
Bruntz, as that game for Minnesota against Purdue was really interesting because, I mean, Purdue really gashed them running the ball on the ground. A lot of teams have really gashed this Minnesota team running the ball. Purdue outgained them by 200 yards offensively. You mentioned the 4 turnovers. This has been a Minnesota team, despite their 4-2 record, that has some of the peripheral numbers seem a little bit thinner than the record would indicate. Is this a game where you think Nebraska has an opportunity to maybe pull away at some point?
I think they have the ability to do so. I think Nebraska has the types of skill players now around Dylan where they can do that. The big play is there, I think, a little bit more than maybe what it's been in the past. And I think that's maybe even when you look back at other games where Nebraska's beaten Minnesota, it's that they've been able to find, big splash. And the Divino Zigbo game, I mean, that was basically the story of the game, were some of those long runs that they were able to find against Minnesota. So I think if Nebraska is able to hit on a few of those, I think that's how they pull away. And it's interesting. I watched a little bit of Cal, Minnesota at the start of the year, and Cal was able to get some stuff done through the air against Minnesota. I think Nebraska's got to be careful because I think Minnesota's probably got the best player on the field, Coy Parrish, in the back end of that defense. But I think this Nebraska team and what they've shown over the last couple of weeks is you at least have that big play potential. And I think you're going to have to hit on a couple of those, not only to win, but certainly if you start talking about pulling away. I think that's got to be part of the recipe.
Speaking on big play potential and potential distractions, Emmett Johnson coming home to Minnesota. I'm still trying to figure out how to word it, but is there any fear of potential, like a distraction, or not a distraction, but him trying to do too much in going back to a team that he wanted to recruit him, a team that he has said that he wanted to go to but was never offered a scholarship?
Yeah, I mean, I think Matt Rhule has said he'd address that with him to kind of, use it as motivation, but, keep your focus on the field. So, I mean, Emmett's a pretty mature guy. I'm sure that, the first couple series, he's going to be pretty charged up. I don't know how you wouldn't be, but, Nebraska's going to need him to do a lot in this game. I mean, he's going to have to block well in pass protection. They're going to need him to run the ball. And I think he's a big a big factor in this one, because if you're able to show that you can run the ball in Minnesota, and I think the potential's there for sure. I mean, I think that opens up the stuff downfield for the passing game. So, he's going to be a guy that I think, if Nebraska's going to come out of there with a win, he's going to have to probably be around 100 yards rushing. Probably going to need to catch the ball a few times and make some plays, but he's kind of on that. He's on a heater right now. Like, I don't know that there's a better way to put it. He's running really well. He's running confidently. And, I think he's going to have extra motivation in this one, given everything that kind of played out during his recruiting process.
Michael, last one for me, and we'll let you go here. Just in general, how do you see this game playing out?
Yeah, to say all that, I think it's probably going to be a close game. It always is. I don't know. I mean, this was a game that at preseason I would have chalked up as a loss for Nebraska. I had it chalked up as a loss for Nebraska. I mean, it's a tough place to play for Nebraska. You wondered if Nebraska was going to be able to make the changes that they had to win these types of games. They've shown the last 2 weeks that they have a little bit of moxie and can win close games. So I think I had Nebraska like 24-20, something like that. Like, I don't think Nebraska covers, but I think Nebraska has enough in this game to be able to pull it out. I think it's a Friday night game. Weird stuff's going to happen, but this feels like a team that Nebraska always kind of has I think has had the talent advantage over Minnesota. But I just think this team's mental makeup is different enough that you're not going to repeat some of the sins of the past.